and do not even plan to move out of it. Then you get the maximum benefit, or you stay agnostic, and then you build your IP on top of it. But you stay somewhere in between, you are heading for a collision.
Actually, what happens when you design your architecture multi-cloud, it becomes like data center. You are multi-vendor dependent. Sometimes DNS is working, not working from third vendor. Sometimes your storage is not working from some other vendor. Then you will not able to pinpoint the problem where it
Can
is
I
throttling.
ask this question in a more exciting way, just to kind of gist it up? Yeah, maybe a couple of you can answer it. What, CNB, since you have the microphone, what would it take for you to move away from Amazon?
Probably any sort of government regulations against cloud, that's about it.
Okay.
Or we decide to compete with Amazon.
Interesting. Okay.
I have seen sort of both sides, I guess. So first of all, I didn't say don't get married. I just said don't get married to tech. So, well, you will have to eventually kind of, find a data center somewhere. And in my experience, I've been working on AWS-based technologies, including the services, which I'm a big fan of. And I have worried about this. What if kind of, these guys go down and my business goes down with them? It's a very valid fear and a concern. But practically speaking, we haven't seen that many outages on AWS. I remember in the iStream days, we were hosted in the Virginia region, and which is the cheapest Amazon. Okay, and I like cheap. I like to be cheap. And see, money you want to spend on your engineers, not on computers. Okay, money you like to spend on your customers, on making the customer experience better. Now, and given that it's a race, you got to get there quickly. So someplace you will have to take a stand and say, this is what I'm going to use, this is what I'm. And the practical experience is one time Virginia, they have this status page, right? Somewhere. We saw that we got an email that Virginia Center might get compromised, it might be down. We got it one day in advance. It was a weekend, so I and the architect, we both of us got into office on a Sunday and sat down saying, okay, you know what? If this happens, we'll move to Portland, that Oregon data center. We set the whole thing up so that in case Virginia goes down, we will do. So, but Virginia never did actually go down. And we were all ready, but the doomsday didn't really come. The flip side of the argument is, if you were managing this data center yourself, how much money would you be spending? And the other thing is, what if that data center, that's another data center only, right? It can get compromised. I've seen captive data centers going offline. Before this, we had, I built the Aadhaar data center earlier, and that has gone down a couple of times. Most people don't even know about it because nobody publishes this. But it was a big pain getting it back on track, getting all the services in place. So my take is it's again a cost question, really. Time to market, cost, this is what matters more. Yes, there is that outside, like Flipkart and Myntra, they never used AWS because they thought, oh, Amazon is a competitor. Flipkart still doesn't use it. They have set up a data center in Chennai. It's a huge data center. You might know of it. They're having a lot of trouble managing it.
Okay, thank you, sir. Other questions? We'll come to you.
Hi, my name is Sanjog. I am from Vijorgo Software Solutions Private Limited. My question is, what's the data privacy policy and data security in cloud platform? Means, suppose I am using Freecharge. I am an end customer. And Freecharge is using one third-party cloud provider, that is AWS or Azure. Then my question is, what is the data privacy model and what is the data security model in your cloud or in your application? How you leverage data privacy?
So in clouds, it's actually shared responsibility. So we are compliant with all the standards like PCI DSS, the RBI wallet regulations. What AWS provides is compliance at the infrastructure level, uh, despite being a multi-tenant environment where they ensure that the data that we have is not exposed to somebody else. So within our account is what they ensure that this data will remain. On top of that, we put in our own restrictions at various levels. It can be perimeter security, it will be host level security, there will be additional trailing, monitoring, data loss prevention softwares on all machines. That's how we basically implement all the standards that are mandatory, as well as go beyond that to implement whatever is not just mandatory but good to have also.
Time to one last question. Yes, sir.
Hi, my name is Madhav. I am from a company called Anadi Tech. Basically, we are SaaS-based mobile application platform which provide communication to schools, colleges, universities on the Android and iOS. What we found during these days, because of the version changes in iOS or in Android, and with different devices which they are customized UI, and we are facing a lot of defects, and which though we are testing it some extent, and the same version it is failing on the different devices. So in the beginning days, it is very hard to fix all these defects. So when it is Freecharge or from you guys, when we are taking the application on Android and iOS, and how we can handle these. We are running, yeah, actually, in fact, there is the Amazon, one of the tool called device form. Actually, we were using the device form, and we could make out that lot of issues which is occurring on the different devices also.
But that's before you go into production. What about things which are already in production? How do you find out that your app is crashing?
And we are using the plugin from the Twitter. That is helping us in some areas, which are the areas we are finding the defects. But which we cannot test it in-house with the less team. We are finding difficult. And when Freecharge, during your beginning days, how you were handling multiple, because you started with the mobile. So how you were handling, and now the different scenario, you got the funding and you are able to.
So largely it is mostly find whichever are the top selling models. You can't really optimize for the last guy, the long tail. Additionally, we always had monitoring in place. We tried a bunch of vendors. It's currently Crashalytics, which tells us that crashes are happening for which version, which app, that sort of stuff. And then that feeds back into the bugs and gets fixed.
Yeah, our scenario is little different because we give the product for the parents, and they come up with the lower end devices also. See, we must support for every user. We cannot say that you cannot go out with the lower end devices, because one parent complains also, school may or college may, they ask us to take out this product. So that scenario is how really it is.
Have you tried Crashalytics?
Yeah, from what is that? From Twitter, we are using one plugin, .io.
No, I think, other than crash analytics, what, help me understand if that's what you are asking. So are you using device farm?
Yeah,
Because we in our place, we evaluated about close to 12 similar contemporary providers, and we found that device farm is the best one so far. And and are you running it for all the target devices that you want your product on? And you have given up your own, have you added your own test cases on top of it? That, that test, because there's a suite of tests that device farm runs for you. Then there's a pluggable test that you can write for your own product, right? I think that area is, I would recommend you to invest more on, use your developers to write more tests on the device farms, which runs around the corner cases that makes your app crashes more. If I were you, I would try and rely on device farm for all the length and breadth of devices it gives, and only after a certain percentage of success of across the length and breadth of devices, then only I make a release happen.
A device form has limitation in terms of the iOS, but Android it runs to
Okay, so you're primarily on iOS.
both actually, both on
I have
Android
just one
and
suggestion
iOS.
for him, right? Divide and conquer. Do not try to create a silver bullet approach to handle low-end से लेके high-end devices. First, the experience you want to give to the low-end user, इतना छोटा सा phone, right? It cannot be the same experience that you give in a big phone. Hence, you might be using libraries, you might be using things which are making it crash on a low-end phone, which has low memory and low screen size. Divide and conquer. Create a lighter version of app, different APK, right? For some LDPI phones, create a different APK for XHDPI, you get the point. Always divide and conquer. You do not solve the entire target segment of yours with a silver bullet. नहीं काम करेगा, कभी भी नहीं. No technology works like that.
We're almost out of time. So, what we'll do is we'll just have one last question for the panelists.
Thank you.
And this is specifically for, we heard a couple of people who probably haven't used AWS. So what would be one, I mean, there are nice things about AWS, there are things to watch out for. But someone starting on, what would be one advice you would give them to watch out for, right? Is it, there are customers who complain about server spawn because it's so easy to spin up instances. So putting controls in place, et cetera, et cetera. What would be one advice you would give people who are novices to AWS?
Can I give more than one advice? I have a laundry list of stuff actually. So, if it is for the business, make sure that you put your governance model from the start. Otherwise, your developers will start bigger instances and it will cost you money at the end of the month. Right? Then security governance, that's also very important. Closer to the production, when you think that your stuff is closer to production, that's is the most having the challenge of that. Then the third thing is if you use something like services like Beanstalks of the world, make sure they are good for all of your use cases. Right? So there are challenges. When you get to any managed service, it's not just about AWS. We are using services from other partners as well. When you use any managed service, they have been written thinking in mind about certain kind of a use case. How much of that use case that is critical to you, you need to evaluate before taking it to production. Otherwise, once the production is running, the clock is ticking, you can't do an open heart surgery there. It's difficult. That's my 2 cents.
So, firstly, I'll just echo what he said earlier about if you are adopting AWS, just use it fully, use all the services possible. Otherwise, you're just binding yourself. And cloud neutral comes with a overhead. You may not want it, and it makes you lose access to all the good bells and whistles underneath AWS. Secondly, I've seen in a lot of companies there is a lot of people don't give access to the Amazon console to anybody but the ops team. So a lot of people don't even understand what is there in AWS and how can we use it. So that's something that I believe everybody should be having access. You have fine-grained policies on what people can do. So we have things like we have novice developers, proficient. It's the same thing with ops, and then we have super admins. But what this does is people can do things on their own. So AWS does give you that self-service platform, and it is important that you leverage it rather than bind yourself trying to fit an older way of working with infrastructure onto something which is actually giving you more freedom. So again, security needs to be implemented, but it has to be done where it is also convenient. So using IAM policies will help you there. Apart from that, not much, I guess.
Okay. So I think I second Chandra on that your engineering team should understand AWS, all of them, including, I'll take it to the extent that we used to hand over the test instance to the testing team. It's yours. Hack it down if you want to hack it down. It's a test site, right? Or test API. The other, so I think it's important, but do it after building sufficient safeguards. And those are not really hard to put in place. With CloudWatch, etc., you can do it rather easily. The other advice is what Ambuj already touched upon. And that is the governance, especially the cost. You can run into a large cost very quickly. So I'm sure in your company there is a guy who worries about money. Get him in the loop. No matter how tech unsavvy he is, he should be in the loop, and you could do some smart things with the AWS billing APIs, tagging your instances, tagging, putting people's name to it, and that person can get an Excel sheet every week. So even when you lose money, you don't lose a whole lot of it. See, you got to pay tuition fee, right? That's the way I think of it. Whenever I learn something new, learning has to come at a cost, but you got to try and minimize that. Other thing is be cautious about algorithmic efficiency of what you're doing, especially if you're in analytics field. Most people don't realize that, and that can come and bite you because analytics is expensive, number one. How many of you here from the analytics background? Okay, not a whole lot, not a whole lot. Good. So there you can run into big numbers. So there, these controls become even more important.
I think most of the points are covered. I have just one point. Ensure that you have one guy in your engineering team who is extremely clear about the logic, who can explain you the logic without using any AWS jargons. Because when things go wrong, imagine Kinesis go down. You have no clue because you just have clicked buttons and created Kinesis, that instance or that workflow. You have actually no clue how the workflow works. Something goes wrong, you have to again go to Amazon support, wait for a day or whatever the SLAs you have, sorry. But have one guy in your team who's extremely clear about the logic, who can explain to you the entire flow without using a single word of AWS technology. That is very important. Otherwise, you'll get just lost in the simplicity.
All right, that's all we have time for. In fact, we are over time. Let's do it offline. We just over time. The next session has to begin. I'm sorry. It was a wonderful panel. Hopefully, it was insightful. Gentlemen, thank you so much for coming down and giving your valuable insights. Big hand to you. All right, next up we have our final session before we end, and that is databases. How exciting it is to have a database session in the evening, just before closing at Whitefield, before you head off for home with all the traffic in place. And we're not going to talk about generic databases, it's going to be about AWS Aurora. And so Abhishek, oh there you go, I thought he was lost and he had himself left. Abhishek is actually going to talk about the nitty-gritties and the details of Aurora, why it was developed, what are the pros and cons, how it differentiates from other RDMSs. It's Amazon's own RDMS. And so he's going to actually talk about that. And you have probably a demo as well? Yeah, he's going to show you a live demo as well with that. Okay, over to you, Abhishek.